Well, my name is Milton. I live in Argentina, and by the time I started with the game, I was working as a sound technician in my very own recording studio with a partner. And the spark that actually interested me in this particular project was bringing Metroid Zero Mission. I actually wanted to experience the same modern gameplay with the rest of the games in the saga. So I did try Fusion. I did eventually beat Super Metroid. And when I actually faced Metroid 2, when I actually got a physical copy of it and tried it on my Game Boy Pocket, it wasn't the most straightforward experience. So I actually had to go to GameFAQs and print a map to actually be able to beat the game. And while it was a nice experience overall, it paled a little bit in comparison to the other ones. So I was actually starting to experiment a little bit more in Game Maker. My prior games were fairly simple in that platform. So remaking a Game Boy game seemed to be like a reasonable project. You know, it wasn't overly ambitious. It's just a 20-year-old game that's in black and white. And I already had at my disposals the sprites for Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission, covering most of the enemies and environments. So, in theory, it should be a fairly straightforward project. Mostly to start getting into scripting and programming for reals, since I don't have a formal background in programming. So most of the stuff I actually made was self-taught.
So, as I understand it, this was just your idea. You're your lone project when it began.
Yes.
But then you kind of elicited help from some, sound designers and artists and programmers from other parts of the internet. Were these friends of yours beforehand, or did they find you through your project?
Well, that's exactly what happened. The project became popular, to my surprise. Turns out to be that I wasn't the only one wanting to play Metroid 2 the proper way, and proper way with quotes in them. So people started to offer help, and I was relieved to be, have more resources by talented people at my disposal. And that was something that made the project grow from something like a small personal experiment into something a little bit more interesting,
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
So these weren't people that you seeked out so much as just the artists that volunteered to help.
Yes, they pretty much showed up, and some of them just emailed me saying, "Look, I did this Metroid sprite. Can you use it in your game? If you like it, I can make more." Sure, why not? Please don't be upset if I cannot really afford to pay you. But this is something I do in all my free time. But if you're cool with it,
Right. You mentioned that the game became popular. Tell me what it was like working on this game that was just, sort of a hobby for you, and then finding all these fans that were, asking questions about the game and wanting to know more information about it, but also having to kind of keep this project under wraps because you were worried about a legal response from Nintendo.
well, there was a shifting in tone from me regarding the project. At first, it was just a game. I'm just experimenting a little bit and just doing stuff for fun. If I finish it, it's cool. If not, it's going to be just another prototype that's tossed into the unfinished stuff bin. But seeing actual people motivated to see this come to fruition was pretty cool. So suddenly, this escalated from being a hobby into something that people were anticipating. So I kind of felt like I had a responsibility to take this a little bit more seriously,
Right.
because it's not just for me now. There's actual Metroid fans, and Metroid fans are a little special. So I had to dedicate a lot more effort into being respectful about the game. So instead of treating this as a 20 years old game that's just some black and white old game, I had to treat it like the entity that it was in the Metroid timeline, and give it the importance that it does have within the actual storyline. Yeah, I actually had to become a little bit more serious thanks to the people, and the project did evolve for the better thanks to that.
So would you say that trying to avoid Nintendo was something that you actively did, or did you just make your project and hope for the best, so to speak?
It wasn't that much of a concern, because Metroid 2 was pretty much forgotten back then. This was 10 years ago, and 10 years ago things were very differently. There was no eShop, there was no legal way of selling ROMs from Nintendo. So Metroid 2 was just forgotten, and it kind of felt safe, like working with abandonware, you know. So, and actually, I actually didn't think the project was going to be taking so much time. Also, but by the time things started to change, and I actually started seeing legal action on other projects, I was slowly starting to get concerned. But I actually had most of the project already done, so it would be a disservice to the fans if I were to just abandon it because of fear.
Of course. Okay, so tell me about, and I believe I understand this correctly, in that you received contact from Nintendo's legal team about a month after the game's release. Is that correct?
And that would be correct. Almost a month after.
Okay, so what did that that email say specifically? Because the way I understood it, it wasn't a cease and desist like everyone was expecting.
These all legal things are so confusing.
Right.
The actual header of the email, the title says the NCA take out notice, but the contents of the letter itself does contain demands, and very specific demands. So it would be classified as a cease and desist order, but it wasn't labeled like that. I'm not sure. I'm really not that well versed into legal matters. But yes, they were very specific, and they were very broad with their terms. So they were pretty sure that there were no loopholes to exploit, not that I actually wanted to do. But pretty much they demanded that I cease production of the project.
So from there, I wanted to ask. Well, this isn't so much a question, so much as just I'd like to hear your response. The position that I'm taking in this video that I'm making, that I'm going to attach this interview to, is basically just that Nintendo handled this situation the wrong way, and that, like, yes, they did have every legal right to do what they did, but just that it sort of soured everyone's impression of the company. Because, like you said, they do now have an eShop. They do now have digital means of downloading games. And Nintendo has such a poor reputation with indie developers as it is. The case that I was going to make is that they should have either allowed you to publish the game on their platform as an indie game. I mean, it's obvious that this game is not Metroid 2. It's a remake of Metroid 2, but they could have presented it in that way and made that clear. Instead of just burying the game completely.
Actually, it wasn't my intention at all to come knocking into Nintendo store and say, "Yo, I have a product for you." Just tell it. No, it's just my own little thing. Fans and speedrunners can have a lot of fun with it, and I can continue to improve it. My main goal for this was to use it to learn, and I did learn a lot throughout the years. So for me, this project has already accomplished what I was actually looking for. I actually wanted to just coexist, like a humble tribute to a very awesome series, and that's pretty much it. It's not the intention is not to compete with a commercial product.
Oh no, I realize that. It bothers me that you spent so much time on this project to then have it be this sort of under the table dealing. You know, like you have to remove the download links. So, it's like you said, speedrunners can still enjoy this game, but they have to find someone that already has it in order to download it from them. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't be treated this way.
Yes, the world is unfair.
I suppose that's true.
If everyone got what they deserved, things would be very different.
Another thing I want to mention was, although your situation is very personal and unique, there are some parallels that can be drawn to other developers. For example, like, there's always been comparisons made between the Metroid series and the Castlevania series, especially with the term, Metroidvania being used to describe both games, which of course is just an amalgamation of both titles. But, Koji Igarashi is no longer employed at Konami, and yet he is using Kickstarter to fund his new Castlevania-like game. You might have heard of it. It's called Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
Ah, yes, I'm really anticipating that one.
And so I noticed the other day the similarities between the situations. You're not a professional game developer, of course, but it's interesting how it's almost like the only way to play these older and more respected titles is to abandon the original IP, it seems. I mean, like with Nintendo, if you can play Other M, you can play the upcoming, Federation Force, and those have the Metroid titles, but are they really Metroid games?
That's the thing. We are people are actually perceiving game mechanics, game design styles, and pretty much the feel of what they experience, like a specific genre. But the thing is, these are brands. These are intellectual pieces of property. And companies are going to do what's best to their knowledge to maximize revenue. And that's what matters most in their cases. So, experimenting with motion controls or stuff, or reusing an existing project and brand it into a recognizable brand to make the most of it should be viable options as a company.
In some ways, that's easier for them.
Yes,
in some ways, it's easier to make a game that's based on a gimmick rather than trying to build, a sequel to Super Metroid, as elaborate as that project would have to be. So I suppose it's understandable.
Yes, we like it or not, Metroid is not one of the most profitable series for Nintendo. So the risks that are going to be taken, and that means money, of course, are going to be much more limited. So these kind of things are going to be expected. It's very unlikely that we are going to be seeing in the near future a fully fledged, full budget, a high scale Metroid adventure anytime soon. Maybe with the upcoming NX, whatever that thing is.
True. That's true.
But we don't know. The future might tell.
So the last thing I want to ask you, tell me where you go from here. Tell me about your future projects. Are you going to continue to develop games? Do you still want to focus on tribute games and freeware, or could you see yourself writing a game that you actually sell one day?
Well, I have no idea. Right now, I'm taking care of my backlog. I'm playing games for a change. I'm enjoying stuff.
That's good.
Sometimes making notes to steal some idea. I mean, get inspiration from some other games, and just trying to enjoy a little bit. The last couple of years, I did take the project very seriously, and coordinating other people and the whole project manager side of the project was very time consuming. So for a change, I'm enjoying games now, focusing a little bit on Metroidvanias. I did play Axiom Verge the other days, and it was very, very good. So yes, just enjoying for now. Eventually, I might go back into game development, and what I can say is that I will try to do original stuff this time. Mostly not because of the legal reasons, because that's the most obvious, but just not to be restrained by an original design. Not having to follow the step or guidelines of an existing franchise. Being able to do anything that works and feels good might be much more interesting than trying to remake something.
Right, of course. That reminds me of, BioWare. They one of their most famous games was it was a Star Wars game, Knights of the Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And working on that game allowed them to explore, the sci-fi genre and building RPGs and all that. But after finishing Knights of the Old Republic, the team was inspired to create a project, like you said, where they could escape the IP, where they could build their own world, and that game became the Mass Effect series.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I see a developer like you, it gets me excited for the future because I know what you're capable of.
Well, most of the success that the project had, that it was that I did spend a lot of time on details, on making sure that every place felt right. And lately, I did incorporate a lot more of playtesting, so people of all ranges of skill were able to actually enjoy it to some extent. So this was all a nice learning experience, and eventually someday I will be able to apply all of this into something new. I'm not sure if it's going to be commercial or if it's going to be free, if it's going to be on my free time. Right now, my main priority is supporting my family and be there for my little girl. And I'm not going to venture into quitting my job and pursue a game development career. That's very risky in this economy and in this country in particular. But I will eventually go back into game development. It's something that it's kind of calling me,
Well, that makes me very happy to hear. So now my channel is still very small, of course, but while you have this opportunity to make your voice heard and just let your thoughts go free, is there anything you'd like to tell your fans or tell Nintendo or tell anyone that's listening?
Thank you. I'm just nobody that's now being featured in a content creator channel, and having the game played and enjoyed by so many people is something that I wasn't imagining at all. So this was a journey with plenty of very nice surprises, and so for that I'm really thankful. That's all, I guess.
Thanks so much, Milton. That was that was a lot of fun, and I want you to know, at least for me personally, that you shouldn't take yourself lightly. This was an 8-year project. This was a magnitude of an endeavor, and you should know that it turned out amazingly.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks so much, my friend. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much again for this invitation. And whatever you need, just let me know, and I'll do my best to give a hand.
I really appreciate your time.
Good night, sir.